I was born in Singapore and immigrated to Canada at the age of 12. And I grew up here, I naturalized here. I wasn't even, though I look Asian, I didn't really have Asian background because we're Singaporean mixed and we spoke English. So when I came to Vancouver, I didn't really blend in with the, there was a lot of Cantonese and immigrants coming in. I naturalized more with the locals. And then, I was the black sheep of the family. I did some illegal things when I was younger, around about 16. And then what happened was when I got in trouble with the law, I made a shift in my life. That's when I started working really hard. I felt I disappointed my family, my parents. And during that time in like 18, 19, I bumped into these guys that were like business mentors. And they were actually forming kind of a group where they had different business mentors speaking to younger people. And a couple of them were in network marketing, some were like engineers, some were architects, some were real estate, some were financial planners. And I guess they were using it as a recruiting process around that time. So I got recruited actually more into network marketing. But the network marketing actually expanded it opened my eyes to personal development. It wasn't so much the network marketing and the making money, but I did see wealthy people, both in the corporate world, like people like Brian Jessel or Seagull, Jimmy Patterson here in Vancouver. But then I also saw very successful small business owners that made their millions. And all of them, the common trend was personal development. Reading books, going to seminars, things like that. So it expanded my mind because I didn't really want to go to university. So I wanted to learn street smarts. Then I got distracted, had a girlfriend break up with me, and I moved out to Japan. I just wanted to explore Asia. A lot of Cantonese were going back to Hong Kong at that time because of the repatriation. And a couple of my friends said, Desmond, you're such a banana. You don't know anything about Asia. You should go back to Asia somehow. I didn't want to go to China, I didn't want to go to Korea, I didn't want to go to Hong Kong, so I chose Japan because I liked racing, I liked sushi, I liked the culture. So I went there on a vacation to meet a girl and I fell in love with the city. Tokyo is like the New York of Asia in a way. And when I went over there, I got caught up over there. I worked in the coaching and corporate training industry first as a salesperson. I had one of my first few mentors as well over there training me how to be good at sales, how to pick up the phone, how to book appointments, how to close sales. And around that time, I also got exposed to Robert Kiyosaki, though he never came out to Japan and he had a Japanese name. And I learned a lot about real estate and different things and business. And that was when I jumped both feet into my very first venture. And that was with these crazy Australians to do a jewelry business dealing in sexual jewelry. And I was the talker who learned how to raise finance. Because I had a network, I'm a strong networker, I had a strong network already at that time, in a short period of time in Japan, of high net worth individuals who would become angel investors in this venture. So I raised $500,000. That business went bankrupt. The partners ran out, left me and this other young guy left in Japan with holding the hot potato. So that taught me a very serious lesson in cash flow as well as also responsibility. I felt very responsible to those business owners. To fast forward the story a bit, I went on to recover. I got married, and so that's when I went off and I went independent, away from my wife, so that we wouldn't divorce. We could have the happy marriage. She does her own project, which I helped to raise the finances for, but now no longer part of. And I went into the music industry. And in the music industry, this is yet another venture, partnered up with a guy from Atlanta, Georgia, who brought a lot of connections to Japan. Just so happened his wife was Japanese, so he was already heavily involved in the music industry, came to Japan because his wife is Japanese. And when we did that, it did very well for about a year. A lot of cash flow, a lot of money in hand. And then my wife's restaurant, true as I expected, started to fail. And $500,000 going down the drain, lawsuits, different thing going on there. So my wife is now completely wiped out. All the money I had is now wiped out. And not only did I get wiped out, but all the people I would normally depend on. So back then I could easily pick up the phone to 10 people and say, hey, I need a $100,000 float. Can you float me $100,000? I'll pay you back in 30 days with interest. But all those people got wiped out with me because I brought them all into the deal. for the cash flow. So needless to say, all those investors were very, very upset with me. And that's when I was just dabbling in internet marketing as a way to generate some income, but I had to come back to Vancouver. So I came back to Vancouver embarrassed after being overseas for 12 years. I felt really, really just disgusted. Embarrassed, shy, moved back to my parents' house, live in the basement, had to get a job. And I got a job with Sony. I worked at Sony, I worked at a couple of their stores, the 3 stores we had here. And I just didn't want anyone to know I was back in Vancouver. I started to research because I had the entrepreneur bug in me. And I could not sit down quietly, so I started to research, what if I was to create an entrepreneurs club? And the first thing I did was type Vancouver entrepreneurs, and boom, who's this Dan Lok guy? Dan Lok this, Dan Lok that. So I was like, who's this Dan Lok guy, man? And personally, it's like, if you don't want to compete with whoever's dominating the market. You want to join them, and partner with them. That's the way I was taught. So, you keep your friends close, you keep your enemies closer. So Dan was my enemy in my mind. I thought, this guy is my biggest competitor. I better go spy on him. So what I did was I first came out to one of the VEG events, and in an instant, I completely changed my mind. Literally, the moment I walked in the door, I thought, no, I don't want to compete with this guy. I definitely want to partner with this guy. Very professional, very, very well organized, definitely knew his stuff. Now, over the years, I'd gone to a lot of gurus. I'd worked with Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, Jay Abraham. They'd come to Japan. I'd been in all this stuff. I'd traveled to the United States at least 2 to 3 times per year, every year, for some sort of personal development training. So I invest a lot of money in personal development. And when I was introduced to Dan, I could definitely sense that he knew his shit, if I can say it that way. He knew his shit. He was coarse a bit, he was funny, he definitely had showmanship. And what it was for me personally, I needed a way to come back, right? I felt I had a somewhat initial fame before and I lost it. And now I needed to come back and come back fast. So I really was looking for a partnership with someone I could respect, someone I trust. And so I didn't want to be like everyone who rushed to contact Dan and say, hey Dan, please mentor me. So I secretly, very quietly, just sat in the sidelines and I tried to think, how can I give value to Dan? What can I give value to Dan? So I started to slowly promote Dan, talk about him in my social media, using my contacts in Vancouver, got him a interview. And I think that charmed him or showed him that I cared first. And then Dan invited to have a meeting more with me to talk about, let's work together, let's test things out. So that's kind of my story of how I went from my whole story and then devastation and then come back to Vancouver, embarrassment, humble myself, and then come back and meet with Dan. So pride was a key factor for me there. And I was feeling like I was getting old. And I had all kinds of excuses and self-limiting beliefs, such as, I'm depending on my mom as a babysitter and she's extremely anti-business. You should get a job, all your business wiped you out. Didn't you learn a lesson? Why you want to go back to entrepreneur again? And so it made it very difficult. Every single time I want to come out, even just once a month to meet with Dan, it was so painful to get out of the house. I would get a lot of emotional pressure over there. So I was, I did not know if I really wanted to go back to entrepreneurship. Maybe I should just get a job. Maybe I should just go work at a bank. Maybe I should go do something like that. Especially while my wife is not here and just with the kids, just have something stable. But then when Sony laid me off, the fear, that was early 2015, I needed to go back to entrepreneurship again. I was doing the online marketing. I was actually afraid to appear on the scene again and how to rebrand myself in Vancouver. I saw Dan as a really good way to help me do that. When Dan actually implemented the mentorship with us, with me at least, what happened was he helped me to structure. He very quickly could pick out my weak points. He could, and then give me, he understood my personality very, very quickly, which made it very comfortable to work with. That's Dan's strong point. He can read people and then he figures out what their weak point is, what their strengths are, and he can quickly give you very short projects that keep me focused. You know, for someone like a personality of my style, a sapphire, I'm sometimes disorganized or, you know, ADD. So he gave me something to work on, chunking it. And when I could chunk it, you know, in step by step, I could see results. Then of course he gave me recognition. He helped to put me on stage again, helped me to find my confidence in speaking again, you know, rebuild my confidence as a business owner, as someone. I was afraid to start mentoring people because of my failures. But Dan showed me that I had successes again. So I'm a loyalty person. I'm a Scorpio. Dan is not 100% Scorpio. He's kind of like just on the verge of Scorpio. Everything I've ever felt from Dan is that he prides, I can feel he holds like loyalty, credibility, integrity at a very high level. So I want to do business with someone like that. And every time we've had discussions, I always feel that trust is a very, very important factor for both of us. So I can trust him, and I want him to trust me. And I feel I've earned his trust. So, you know, that's key. Once the trust is there, we can do any kind of business. Yeah, it's long term. I'm looking for long term. I speak less. I'm able to close better. I'm able to read people better. He's taught me how to read people better. He's also taught me to pick and choose in a better way. So what I mean by that, pick and choose. Before, I'm trying to do too much. Now he showed me to, you know, to pick and choose certain deals, like the 80-20 rule sort of things, those kind of things, who to spend my time with more. And he helps me to qualify people better. So I think those are very big improvements for me. As a result, my income has gone up. I've become a better coach. I've become a better speaker. I have a clearer plan, what I need to do, how to brand myself. As a fatherpreneur, right? So I have to have this work-life balance, right? Now this was something I was a little bit worried about because when I approached Dan doesn't have any children. So I was worried that maybe he could not really mentor me as a father on that side, you know, like how to be a business owner with kids. But on the other hand, Dan has a pretty good perspective. I think he's, you know, he doesn't have to have kids himself, but he definitely understands. He's very sympathetic, or I won't say sympathetic, it's not the right word. He's very cognizant, he's very aware. So Dan always makes sure that whatever advice he gives me, you know, he knows that is very precious for me, the children time. So he doesn't overload me with too much stuff. And you know, he tries to figure out what I like to do and what are my passions, and then he basically gives me advice on how to improve what I'm doing. So as a fatherpreneur, I'll give you an example. Like he talked about some of the videos I make, you know, showing my lifestyle videos, and he's like, well, those are great, but now how about giving some, you know, content or some in-depth how-to type videos so that you can not only show your lifestyle as a happy dad, but someone who's also a professional, someone who's an authority, who can give, you know, these kind of skills that's going to attract the people that want to be mentored by you as well. So that's one thing. The next was the skills that Dan taught me on closing for high-ticket items. That increased a lot. I was good at sales, but I was good at small sales. So I was bringing in a lot of small sales, spending a lot of time with these sales. What Dan did was, in a very short period of time, showed me how to close one high-ticket sale that covered my entire quota. So instead of doing, you know, say 20 phone calls, I just did one phone call and I made the same amount of money. That was a big leap in income right away. I love the inner circle because of the one-on-one time with Dan, right? You can't get that. If you were to go to VEG or watch YouTube videos, now that Dan has given me the responsibility and the honor of being the director of the DLIC, I actually probably sit in a very unique seat in that I get to see more than the other DLIC members. And what I see is a lot of people, a lot of hopeful young entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs that think they know it all. They think that if they watch 100 Dan Lok videos, they know it all. But really, they haven't even scratched the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more. It's priceless, the amount of information you get by being just around at the dinners, in the workshops, the hot seats, you know. And I even think there's so much more that Dan would like to give, that he can give, but we just lack the time. Even if we were to spend 24 hours, 7 days a week with Dan, in the shower with Dan, eating dinner with Dan, in the living room, sleeping with him, you would still never be able to learn everything. And so I think DLIC is priceless for anyone who is really, really looking for a business partner and a mentor. And yeah, just VEGs, like the one-day seminars and things like that, not enough. I'm just gonna imagine a sort of a case study or a certain person, and why should they hire Dan? I don't know. I would probably reply to him and say, I don't know, you tell me. Why do you think, you tell me what is your expectation from Dan? Because I don't know what they know of Dan, and I don't know what their weak points are, what their strengths are. In general, what Dan has trained me to ask these guys is, what do you expect to get out of, the mentorship? And if they can answer that question, if they, for example, they can give some quantifiable number, my business is making 100,000, I think if I work with Dan, I can get 300,000. Good, he just answered the question. Dan's gonna give me more confidence, or Dan's gonna show me, help me to do some joint ventures. Good, they just answered the question as well. So why should they hire Dan? I trust Dan. Dan has all the knowledge. There's a reason you're coming to Dan. It shouldn't be that I have to pitch Dan to them. It should be the reverse. They should pitch why Dan should be. They should try to convince me why I should say to Dan, hey Dan, I think this guy would be a good mentee in the DLIC. They need to sell themselves, because quite honestly, Dan has very limited time. And I honestly don't think that Dan should be wasting his time with people that are not going to implement what he's going to do, right? What he's going to teach them. So if they are not willing to, fight for Dan's time, we're not going to go and sell Dan to them. They got to sell themselves to Dan. Yeah.
Hey friends, Desmond soon again. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you enjoyed today's video and you think it'd be beneficial to your family, friends, neighbors, or coworkers, I'd like you to scroll down to the right underneath the video and click the red subscribe button underneath my name. Underneath that, I'd like you to click the thumbs up that says like. And scroll over to the right of that, I'd like you to click the button that says share, so that you can share this video with your family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. And you can share it on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, etc., etc. Hey, there's lots of great things going on right now, and we really need to get this information out there. Okay, my friends, that's it. Thank you so much, and you have a terrific day.